Good afternoon, folks. Pastor Greg coming at you on this Good Friday 2020. Last night, as we left our Monday, Thursday service, we find ourselves today here on Good Friday. A lot happened during the evening, of course, that last night of Jesus' life. He went to the garden where he dealt with his destiny. What was going to happen and how was he going to face the cross? In that time period, Judas comes and betrays him. The palace guard, they come and they arrest him and take him away to be tried at the religious leader's home. There he's humiliated, beaten, battered, and bruised, and taken off early the next morning to see Pontius Pilate. Now Pontius Pilate is a Roman governor, and the reason they have to go to see Pontius Pilate is because the Jews were not allowed to put anyone to death. And because Jesus claimed to be the Son of God, he was worthy of death in their eyes. When they got to Pilate, Pilate questioned him, well, why are you bringing this man to me? And they're like, well, surely he's a criminal, or we wouldn't brought him to you. And Pilate questions him, and he asks him about his kingdom. And Jesus makes very clear, look, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, people would be here fighting for my release right now. Well, that didn't go over well. Pilate says, well, you are a king then. And Jesus says, that's exactly the truth. It is as you are saying. And for this I was born. Well, Pilate goes outside to the Jews and says, look, guys, I see no fault in this man. I see no reason for the accusation. But because it's your tradition at Passover for me to release one prisoner, I will release Jesus as an act of goodwill. Well, the Jews don't like that. And they cry out, no, not him. Release Barabbas. Now Barabbas was a criminal, a rebellious person as well, and they want him released instead of Jesus. They want Jesus to face the execution. Well, Pilate says, I'm not doing this. Take him away, and I want to, scourge him and make him, beat him a little bit, and I'll bring him back and we'll discuss this some more. Well, that's what happens. They take Jesus out, they scourge him, hitting him, placing the crown of thorns on his head, and dressing him in the purple robe. Jesus comes back to Pilate, and as the Jewish leaders are there, he says to them, here is your king. Behold the man. Well, they want nothing to do with this. They say, cry out, crucify, crucify. They smell blood on Jesus, and they want to go all the way. Well, at this point, Pilate says, why? What has he done to deserve crucifixion? And they spell it out for him. Look, Pilate, this man claimed to be the Son of God, and he is worthy of death. At this point, Pilate was afraid. He didn't know what to do. He brought Jesus back in, but Jesus wouldn't speak a word to him. He said, now look, don't you know I have the power to crucify you or release you? And Jesus said, look, buddy, you'd have no power over me unless it was given from above. But the ones who delivered me up to you has a greater sin. Pilate took him back out. And as he did so, he asked again, should I release your king? And they said, no, crucify, crucify. And they kept badgering and yelling, and it was a shouting match, all while things had changed from Palm Sunday. Finally, Pilate relents. He says, should I crucify your king? And they say, we have no king but Caesar. At this, he's handed over to be crucified. Now the Roman soldiers were very precise at crucifixion. And so as they did so, they brought Jesus to Golgotha there, and they crucified him, and a sign over his head read, Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. Now the religious leaders didn't like this. They said, well, don't say that. Say that he said he was the King of the Jews. And Pilate said, what I have written, I have written. The day wore on, and the soldiers divided up the clothes of Jesus, and finally they came to a really nice garment. They said, boys, let's cast lots for this. Let's gamble for this piece. It's too nice to just tear up among us. So they did that. And again, fulfilling prophecy in Scripture. Later on, Jesus thirsts. He says, I'm thirsty. He's had nothing to eat, nothing to drink. At this point, probably at least 12 to 13 hours. Maybe much longer. So they bring Jesus some of this wine vinegar, place it on a sponge and lift it up to his mouth, and he loosens up his tongue and his throat just long enough to speak some more. Finally, he cries out, it is finished. And at that, he gives up the ghost. They take him down from the cross and they put him in a new tomb. Looking at his body, they see that he'd been injured. Not only his hands, his feet, his head and his back, but of course the sword pierced through his heart. They prepare his body, they put him in the tomb. The tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, a well-known religious leader. And that tomb was new, had never been used. And the stone sealed it shut. Later the religious leaders would come by and say, wait a minute, we need to make sure this is sealed. So they go to Pilate again. Pilate's about had enough of these guys, but he hears them out, and he says to them, now look, we need to seal this tomb. If we don't, we're afraid that somebody will come steal the body, and then, that would be worse than what's happened now. So Pilate agrees, and he puts a guard there. He seals the tomb with a Roman seal, and there they guard Jesus of Nazareth, Son of God, laid in the ground after giving up the ghost, all bled out, all drained out, dead. Well, that's where we leave it tonight. Jesus in the ground. But that's not the end of the story. It may be Friday, but Sunday's coming. Have a great rest of your weekend. Peace out.